They say when you feel the presence of evil around you, you run to God, to a temple, a mosque, a church. Because where there is God, there is safety. But what if the place meant to save you becomes the very source of evil? Tonight, we travel deep into the English countryside to a place called Borley Church, a place cursed by centuries of death, betrayal, and revenge. A place so haunted that even Ed and Lorraine Warren, the most famous paranormal investigators in history, admitted they had never faced anything this dark before. This is not just a ghost story. This is a warning. The year was 1979. Storm clouds gathered over the village of Borley. The wind screamed through the trees like the voices of the dead. The villagers had long warned outsiders to stay away from the old church at night. They spoke of footsteps echoing in empty halls, of candles lighting themselves, of a woman in black wandering the graveyard with no face. But that night, Ed and Lorraine Warren ignored the warnings. They had heard too many stories about Borley Church. Stories of priests abandoning their posts, families fleeing in the middle of the night. And so, just before midnight, their car pulled up to the gates of the church. The building stood like a shadow against the stormy sky. Its steeple, broken and jagged, pointed toward the clouds like a warning finger. Ed switched off the engine. For a moment, the only sound was the rain hammering the roof of the car. "Lorraine," he said softly, "you feel that?" She nodded. The air felt heavier here, colder, like the entire place was holding its breath, waiting. The heavy door creaked as Ed pushed it open. The inside smelled of damp wood and something else, something foul. Their flashlights cut through the darkness. The pews were covered in dust. Cobwebs hung like curtains from the rafters. The altar stood in the distance, blackened, cracked, almost alive. As they stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind them. Both jumped. "Probably the wind," Ed muttered. But Lorraine froze. Her eyes locked on the far corner of the church. There, standing by the altar, was a woman. Her clothes were black, torn, the habit of a nun hanging loosely around her pale face. Her eyes were empty, hollow. She didn't move. She didn't blink. And then, she slowly raised one hand and pointed at Lorraine. A deep, guttural whisper filled the air. "Leave. Now." Then, she vanished. The next morning, the Warrens met the local priest. When they described what they saw, his face turned white. His hands trembled as he gripped his Bible. You saw her," he stammered. Lorraine nodded. The priest whispered a prayer under his breath before speaking again. "Dear God, she's awake again." "Who is she?" Ed asked. The priest's voice dropped to a whisper. "That nun was buried alive in this very church centuries ago, and every time she rises, death follows." The priest told them the story. It began in the 14th century. The church was home to nuns and monks who had taken vows of silence and devotion. But one young nun fell in love with a monk from another monastery. Their secret meetings in the dark halls of Borley Church went unnoticed for months. But when the truth came out, the punishment was brutal. The monk was hanged from a tree outside the church, and the nun, her punishment was worse. They chained her hands, dragged her inside the church, and bricked her alive inside the wall beneath the altar. Villagers said her screams echoed for hours, before finally falling silent. That night, the candles blew out on their own, and the church bells rang at midnight, though no one touched them. From then on, the church was cursed. Over the centuries, the haunting grew stronger. Priests heard footsteps in empty corridors. Villagers saw a woman in black wandering the graveyard at night. Children whispered about a pale face staring from the church windows. One priest's entire rectory burned to the ground. Witnesses swore they saw a black figure standing in the flames. Families moved into nearby houses and left within weeks. They heard voices in the walls. Cold winds sweeping through locked rooms. Cries of a woman at night. Years later, Reverend Henry became the priest of Borley Church. At first, he dismissed the stories as superstition, until one evening, children playing near the church ran to him in tears. They had seen her, the nun, floating across the graveyard, her face pale, her habit stained with dirt and blood, and she had no feet. That night, as Reverend Henry prayed alone, the temperature dropped suddenly. The candles flickered and went out. A woman's voice whispered his name. Slowly, he turned toward the altar. She was standing,